Good morning, dear friends on the Dharma path. Wednesday, June the 17th, 2020, in the time of COVID-19. In a world that seems just a little more crazy than usual, or maybe a lot more crazy than usual. Such times are not limited to modernity, of course. They've happened throughout human experience. I have another poem this morning from this lovely little book, The First Free Women, Poems of the Early Buddhist Nuns. I think I have the whole poem this morning, not just the first half. I'll be careful now. My mother put on robes when I was just a child. Can you imagine? I was angry that she had shaved her head and made herself so ugly. Years later, she came back. She was still wearing robes. Her head was still shaved. But somehow I no longer found her ugly. She called me to her and said, "Just remember, my daughter, there is only the path." Then she left again. From that day on, I could feel the path growing inside me, sometimes kicking and punching, sometimes quietly napping, sometimes gently humming to itself. When I felt like I was going to explode, my mother was there. "It's coming," she said. "Just relax and let go. Say it however you want. You carry the path, and the path carries you. In the end, when it's your time, the final push will come from a strength you never imagined you had." My mother put on robes when I was just a child. Can you imagine? I was angry that she had shaved her head and made herself so ugly. Years later, she came back. She was still wearing robes. Her head was still shaved, but somehow I no longer found her so ugly. She called me to her and said, "Just remember, my daughter, there is only the path." Then she left again. From that day on, I could feel the path growing inside me, sometimes kicking and punching, sometimes quietly napping, sometimes gently humming to itself. When I felt like I was going to explode, my mother was there. "It's coming," she said. "Just relax and let go. Say it however you want. You carry the path carries you. In the end, when it's your time, the final push will come from a strength you never imagined you had." I had a conversation with someone yesterday who used the term, the shiny, bright things. There's all these shiny, bright things that attract, and when I get this, when I finally get that, when I get rid of this, when I finally have that, then I'll be really happy. Is it true? A little dog just appears, comes in and tap dances on the plywood. So, where might we take refuge in the midst of a world where everything changes? Where everything changes, imagine that. It's hard to let go of the notion that someday it's going to all come together. I remember in the 60s, I was very sure ours would be mine would be the generation that ended poverty and be the end of war. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Being awake, I take refuge in being awake. I was awake early this morning, some reason, 4 o'clock. Sleep was gone. Sat on the couch a long time, kind of marveling. It's aware of itself. It somehow is it knows that it exists. Right now. Isn't that strange that consciousness exists? I take refuge in the Dharma, in that which one finds with a clear mind and heart. The laws of physics and chemistry and karma. And I take refuge in the community of practice, the Sangha. The community of all life. So please join me if you wish, as you wish. But not just singing a little ditty, a little song, but what does it mean? What does it mean to take refuge? I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. I aspire to live in the present moment, to discover really what it's like to be a human being now. I've done enough thinking for a long time. For a lifetime. What shiny, bright things are you going to chase after today? What pleasures to chase, what discomforts or unpleasant things to avoid? And right now there's an opportunity to just land here in however now is. We could call it meditation, or we could call it coming home. We could call it simply being, or being simply. Please notice the coming and going of everything, and in particular, perhaps, the coming and going of the breath, the sensations of breathing. There is only the path. The path to this moment, this present moment now, of breathing, of sitting here. Noticing the thoughts which are present. Each breath has a beginning. It comes out of no thingness. It really doesn't exist. And then it comes into being. At the beginning of the meditative journey, sometimes we know that the mind wanders a bit, but we really have no inkling how much of the time we're lost in the trance. And then gradually, as awareness grows and the other enlightenment factors develop, we discover how absolutely insane the human mind is. And ever so kindly and lovingly, when we continue paying attention, it does become obvious that there are gaps. We awaken from the trance of the self and of everyday life, and there is simply awareness here. Awareness of hearing, awareness of thoughts, awareness of body sensations. Awareness of breathing in and breathing out. The very attitude with which we come to our practice is of great importance. The way is love and compassion. We're not going to beat ourselves into love and compassion at some point. It's either here or it's not. So there's that beautiful intention. I aspire to love and accept myself exactly as I am in this moment. It's kind of wild, exactly as I am in this moment. So we might discover desire, wanting something, or aversion, disliking something, pushing it away. We might discover worry and restlessness and agitation, or sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor. Or we might discover doubt. Or there might be emotions running. These are all grist for the mill of awakening. Each breath is an invitation home into the present moment, into this body. This practice of being can only be done one moment at a time. We say, I meditated for half an hour or an hour or 5 minutes. There's a way that's conventionally true. But that is an idea or a memory, radically different from being awake in this moment, which only happens now, ever. So there's no need to worry if your mind spends a lot of time wandering, or if you're caught up in some emotional uproar, or if you've gone dull and tired. Becoming aware of that is perfect practice. It's hard to believe. It's so non-linear. It's so non-cognitive, non-intellectual. It's just be awake, be here now. When we sit for a while, the body will become responsive, might become stiff, might hurt. Learning to bear with that which was previously unbearable is very central to our practice. So we stop running, we reduce our chasing after the shiny, bright things, and are pushing away and running away from the unpleasant things. Ever so slowly, delicately, lovingly, we undermine that sense of I like, I don't like, and become the awareness in which everything happens. several decades ago when I was about to teach my first weekend retreat. I called Ruth Dennison, my teacher of 40 years, and I said, "Ruth, I'm really nervous. I don't know what I'm going to do or say." And she said simply, "Darling, remember your sitting bones, and everything will be fine." So where is it that the chair, the cushion, presses against your sitting bones? She would have us sit on a hardwood floor with just those 2 points of the pelvis on the floor. It gets kind of bright. But you can also just be aware of your sitting in the cushion. Mindfulness practice begins awkwardly, like learning an instrument. And then it becomes more artful, and ultimately it becomes a kind of freedom, automatic. One is naturally awake, mindful a lot of the time. And so we let go and let go and let go and embrace our true nature as this living process. As the universe unfolding. At the other end of the paradox is, of course, the separate identity. That which gets born and then created through conditioning and then disappears near the end of life or disappears at death. One of the bright lights of my generation passed away last year, Ram Dass. And in his final years of teaching, he kept talking about all we're doing together is walking each other home. So why not imagine that you can reach out, maybe even reach out your hand. Reach out your hand and find the hand of one of our community members there. And it's so beautiful to touch in this era of COVID-19. And let your other hand reach out and find another hand. An imaginary or metaphorical hand. And give the hand on your left a little squeeze. It's that squeeze of, I know you're there. I know you're there, and I want to reassure you I'm here. It's said well in the A. A. Milne poem. Piglet wandered up to Pooh and said, "Pooh?" And Pooh said, "What, Piglet?" Piglet replied, "Oh, nothing. I just wanted to be sure of you." And letting that right hand now, V, give a little squeeze to that imaginary person on your right. Wish them well. What would you wish them? What are you wishing them? May you be not too attached to the shiny, bright things. May you be not too repelled by the unpleasant and challenging things. May you remember your true great nature. And now noticing that the people to either side of you could wish you well, maybe at the same time. Wouldn't that be grand? See if you can let down your defenses and accept that these people really wish you well. And wish yourself well. May I be really happy. May I be free from fear and danger. May I live with ease and grace, and may I be liberated. May mindfulness grow in me every day, every hour, every minute. May I become more and more compassionate with myself. And there's a classic invocation, very much a part of Buddhist practice. At the end of a time like this, may all beings share in the merits of my practice. I dedicate this time of practice to all beings. And who knows what it does for all beings, but it certainly is a beautiful experience in ourselves. I wish all beings well, all beings without distinction. No holding back anywhere. And please now very mindfully bring your hands together and let them do that very characteristic gesture that we call washing my hands. Let them caress each other. Be aware of the contact. How loving can it be? Left says to right, I'm so glad you're here. Right says to left, I'm so glad you're here. Let's hang out together. Let's have a really loving relationship where we take care of each other. And now please bringing awareness to the region of the universe that you think of as your face. And the cheeks and nose and eyes. Maybe let your eyes roll around in your sockets a little bit. Feel them. And then notice what's required. There's an intention required, and then letting the eyes open. And seeing will begin. Notice seeing. And in this case, the seeing is little postage stamps with living, beautiful human beings in them. Why not pick one of these faces, and maybe one you don't know, maybe one you've never noticed before. Oh, there's you. May you be really happy today. Content. May that nagging anxiety really diminish for a whole day. There really is a path. It's really highly articulated. The Buddha called it the Eightfold Path. And it has to do with really checking out our worldview and what is my worldview? Do I believe the worldview of capitalist, consumerist materialism that says if I just got to go to the right stores, I'd be happy? If I could just get the right stuff, the right vacation? Or does my worldview include the truth of impermanence? And what do I aspire toward? Have you written a mission statement for your life? Where are you going? What's your purpose? Quite a couple of decades ago, I spent a couple of weeks each summer on a small island in British Columbia. I took with me The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, with the intention of following chapter 3 and writing a mission statement. And I toiled and toiled and toiled and toiled and toiled. Finally, it became clear that my mission was to follow the Eightfold Path to the best of my ability and to share it as effectively as I could. And it was such a breakthrough. I came home and showed it to my kids individually, and each of them said, well, duh, you didn't need to take 2 weeks to go to an island to figure that out. But what is your mission? It can be as simple as I aspire to become kind and loving, wise. So I think that's really all I want to share today. Mine's pretty quiet here. I don't know that I have announcements. I think, Alicia, would you speak about the adventure with the Tough Shed for me?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Robert.
You're kind of quiet.
I'm quiet?
Yeah, I think. Maybe not. Say again?
Okay.
Oh, you're just fine. These things.
I won't shout at you all then. We are in the middle of our campaign. We're kind of in that almost to 6/10 of the way there stage. And as you know, we're raising funds to create a remote broadcasting site for these morning gatherings, and as well as other online gatherings that Robert is conducting from his home, as opposed to the PIMC Center. So I invite you to contribute to this campaign as you're able. And I'm mindful to invite you that you are contributing in addition to contributions that you make to the ongoing operations of the PIMC Center. I've posted information to chat as usual. I also did a little test just in case you're going online to GoFundMe, without the link. If you just type in tent as a keyword, you're going to come up with a lot of results. So if you just are keeping in mind one word, you might go for Tough Shed. But otherwise, if you type in out of the tent, you will get to the campaign page. So thank you, as always, for making yourself a part of this beautiful Sangha. And thank you for contributing to the campaign as you're able.
Thank you, Alicia. I tried out of the tent, and it actually was very humbling. There are quite a few people who are wanting to get out of the tent because that's where their home is.
Yes, I noticed that.
It was very humble requests. I thought I would go and have a little fun there today. Generosity is such a trip. Whenever we have the experience of I have enough or I have a little extra and I would feel good to give it, it just feels better and better the more often and the more we develop that practice of generosity.
And actually, I thought that going to GoFundMe is actually very reassuring and inspiring because there's so much generosity happening everywhere.
Stunning. I heard yesterday the amount of money that had been given philanthropically in the United States last year, and it was in the billions. It's really, really quite. We we can be really crappy people, and we humans can be really both poles. And I aspire to go in the direction of kindness and love myself. I bet you do too, or you wouldn't be here. So thank you, my dear. Let's see what you have going today. If you'd like to share something, anybody, please. Just unmute yourself.
Robert, I've got an easy question for you.
Jim.
You every day almost you talk about the 5 hindrances, and starting off with what is it, liking or disliking?
Lust.
Always lust. Well, I'm wondering. I was sitting on my porch this morning, very early, around 5, looking at the house across the street, and it always brings up the same sort of reaction that I don't like this house, and then I almost started to analyze, well, what is it? Well, I don't like the color, I don't like the bricks, I don't like this, I don't like this. And I was wondering if the hindrance is just judging things as liking or not liking, or I guess I was not liking. I'm a little confused if the whole thing is evaluating and judging, or the act of desiring and not desiring.
Well, it's all the same color palette. And some of us go through the world liking and disliking everything we see. And actually, there's 3 character types. You know, every system has its typology of character. And there's the Jungian system and the this and the that. And the Buddhist typology is there's the greed type, who walks into a room and says, "Oh, I like this, I like that, I want this, I like that." The aversion type, who walks into a room and says, "Well, this is wrong and that shouldn't be like that, and this should be a different color." And then there's the deluded type, the ignorant type, who isn't quite sure they're in the room. and we all have some of it, but we also specialize, and so it's actually very helpful to know what type someone that you're living with is, because then you can give them more acceptance for the fact that they always find something wrong with something, or that they're always lusting after what can I get on Amazon, or that they're just kind of drifting around and bumping into things. So yeah, it's all of it's the impulse toward and the impulse to push away. And of course, we're guided by this as mammals, and we must be. So it's not to get rid of it, but it's to not be a slave to it. And the more we can observe liking and disliking in the mind, then we can live in much greater peace, because we realize, oh, that's what the mind does, and I don't have to take it seriously. What's wrong with that house across the road anyway?
They're repainting it, and I don't like the color that it was. They repainted it the same color, and for some reason I don't like the color of the bricks, and then also the shingles, whatever they are on the outside. Mm-hmm. I prefer wood.
I see. You could tell them. You could offer to pay for a paint job and a shingling.
They're painting it right now.
I know. Well, you could either that, or you could sneak over at night and repaint it a different color. Thanks, Jim. About 45 years ago, my first wife and I took 25 students to Lewis and Clark students to India ready for this 5 months. And in order to go on the trip, you had to agree, the kids had to agree, that they would do a 10-day meditation retreat. Now that's a lot to ask of 20, 21-year-olds. And so some of them went over the wall and disappeared into India for the days. And one woman took Quaaludes the whole time, we discovered later. She was the perfect meditator. And but two of the guys came back. Oh, and the night that we landed there, the Metro Circus came to town, and it was right up behind the Mahabodhi Temple in Bodh Gaya. And they had a piece of railway iron, about a railway track about 3 feet long, and they hit it with a ball-peen hammer with a microphone against it. Ding, 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 ding. And they played Indian show music late into the night and all afternoon and so on. They only had about 4 or 5 different recordings. And it brought up a lot of aversion. And it actually burned out it created in me the capacity to be with sound without being troubled. But two of the guys came back one night and they said, we figured out where the central power supply is and we can kill that thing. And so much aversion was there, they were about to get themselves arrested in India. So it behooves us to learn how to tolerate that which we can't change, and maybe not to suffer so much.
Morning, Robert. It's Michael.
Hello, Michael.
Morning. Hello, Sangha. I had stepped out and came back in sort of the middle of the discussion of what Jim was talking about aversion towards the house. And some people know I'm a photographer, and I've been working for several years on again, off again on a project of mine of dropping myself into a neighborhood I don't know and walking around with a camera and photographing houses and homes from the street as they appear. And the point of the project is to challenge my own and the viewers' judgment of when they look at a house, what their initial reaction is, whether that house is on the decline, or is it being fixed up into a way that it's being improved, whatever that means. And I've found that over the years that I've done this for 3 or 4 years, that it's really been an exercise for me to challenge myself of how I judge things based on my own upbringing, my own preconceptions.
Right.
That is fascinating. I recommend it not even with a camera. Just drop yourself into a neighborhood you don't know and take a walk and see what comes up. It's an interesting exercise.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bias. I like to and have done on many occasions when we gathered in crowds, go to the mall or somewhere and walk through with very soft focus and notice the faces that there's liking, the faces there's disliking, the body shapes there's liking, there's desiring, there's aversion, there's judgment. It's amazing how this mind is conditioned to like and dislike, and also trying to be aware, who do I not see? Who's invisible? And then you find out the categories that you've been taught not to, and so bias emerges. One's own bias becomes apparent. And Janet made a comment on the chat I noticed come through, which is that I used the word not to be a slave to these, and she said she's trying to not use the word slave. And that's a worthy undertaking, I think. Thank you, Janet.
This is Rebecca. Good morning.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hello. I was thinking yesterday about, I get so many suggestions from friends and or come across places where I can expose myself to trainings and teachers in this environment. It's just, and yesterday I was just feeling overwhelmed. I've just been getting so much, and I've been finding some just really rich stuff, but I just was feeling like it was too much. And I thought, well, I think I'm not going to do this one and that one. I think maybe I should just sit more. So I thought that's what I would do in the near term, is just try to do more meditation. And this morning I was just really in one of those nice spots, where I was just at peace, and I was just so appreciating the guidance you were providing. And then this cat fight broke out in the other room. My big male was attacking my little peewee 20-year-old cat, and it was just one of those really nasty fights. And I almost left the cushion to go put out the fire. And so it was like, and I was thinking of you're talking about bright and shiny things, how sort of those teachings can become, I want to get it. I want to get that one and that one. And, but it was interesting, just that whole circle, how I was, choosing to be more mindful. And then in the midst of my mindfulness, this cat fight breaks out, and life interferes with my plan. And so it was just kind of interesting to observe that.
Did they work it out?
They did. They settled down in time that I did not need to. I think the big cat is trying to get me to get off the cushion and go in there and feed him breakfast. So he makes tries to lure me.
How
out of my
sensible.
state.
Sensible.
He's very.
This
very
always worked before.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rebecca. Speaking of liking and disliking, that is the second foundation of mindfulness, the second realm. The Buddha said, pay attention to the body, but also then pay attention to liking and disliking. How it happens all the time. At every sense contact, there's liking. We're pushed and pulled. And just to observe that all day can become a really interesting practice. To sit down with a plate of food and notice where the liking is greater. Whenever I talk of this, I think of ripe strawberries. Now that's liking. Or a really good green olive. And then there's kind of white rice. So what? It's white rice. But there's a hierarchy of desire on the plate.
I had a special highlight yesterday. I am involved with the Nextdoor. It's kind of like a neighborhood bulletin board.
Yeah.
That young man is offering to detail your car. Well, I don't think I've had my car washed, 5 times in the last 5 years. So I hired him. He came to my home and in the driveway detailed my car. Maybe a mid-30-year-old who had a long series of, I guess I would say, retail, blue-collar type jobs, and he's now working for himself. He is the happiest person I ran into yesterday. I was so happy for him that he is self-employed. He is booked 2 and 3 weeks out. He has never been busier in his life. And I got a real confidence that this is the new economy. And as third world as it is, to show up with a bucket and a brush to give service, it absolutely is working for him. It was working for me, and apparently for a lot of people for the next several weeks. That is keeping him busy. So big joy yesterday.
Isn't it lovely that it made you so happy?
Oh, my car is really, really shiny right now. So it's fun. Talk about shiny things.
Right, there you have it.
There you have it.
Thanks, Francine.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there it is. I just, there's, I donated to the Tough Shed, but I'm going to miss the tent and the bird sounds and the pounding rain. We have such a cool thing going at 7. It's true. I have a certain reticence like that myself. Incidentally, if you go to the chat, you can. There's three little dots on mine off to the right, and you can click Save Chat. So if there's information posted there you want to save afterwards, and it saves it to a particular spot on your hard drive. I can't describe that, but you can probably find it. So.
Robert, do we have time for one more disliking?
Sure. You're not showing your aversive character, are you?
Oh, yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'm with a friend quite a bit, and for some reason, this friend tells me about things that they see that they don't like. Like, oh, this smell is horrible. Well, I don't have a great sense of smell. I didn't even know it. And even when I learn there's a bad smell, I can't really appreciate it. But a more common one is, oh, the city, Portland's got so much trash. The homeless, it's just, oh, it's sickening. I just, I can't stand it. Or look what they're doing over here. Or why don't they clean this up over here? And I'm thinking to myself, you're sharing these things that you don't like. And somehow, instead of me just thinking it's a cloud going overhead or something like that, I sort of am bummed out by it, I guess.
Uh-huh. You become aversive about his or her aversion.
Actually, I do. I become aversive about the aversion, and
Right.
I'm also aversive that now I've noticed something that is, it's not the most beautiful thing in the world, a bad smell or a pile of trash,
Right.
Now, what am I supposed to say? Thank you for sharing this with me?
Well, depending upon your investment in the relationship and the kind of relationship it is, it'd be an interesting conversation piece. When one is married to someone with an aversive propensity, it inevitably becomes an issue that you wind up talking about, because it's hard, and we all have our type, right? And so, but I think it's fascinating And you just described it beautifully. Here's a person who's aversive and pointing out aversive things that they experience as aversive, and you become aversive toward that person's pointing out the aversive things. And then you've got your work really clear there, which is, oh, here's aversion. All right. I mean, so what if they're doing that? Or maybe you want to address it.
I think that's a better. I think what I've been doing is thinking, well, this person's bothered by this and sharing that. That's one thing, but why isn't at least half the time this person sharing things they do like? I mean, I'd feel better if I heard what a beautiful sky this is today, and that bunch of trash is really bothering. Then I could sort of, see it's a balance.
Yeah. Well, and they might be happier too, but they may need to discover that on their own. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Great question. Great observation. Well, it's a little after 8. Anybody sitting with something that you're censoring because you think you shouldn't say it? Remember Art Linkletter? What the kids say the darndest things? What did your mommy and daddy tell you not to say on the program? Well...
Hi, Robert.
Stephanie, hello.
Hi. I've been holding this in for a while, but I don't know. It's hard to talk with these guys, so okay. Okay. So about a couple months ago, I was talking about processing with my mom.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, I have been. And I just wanted to say we've been having, I'm going to move. So sorry.
It's quite all right.
So yeah. Shh. I'm so sorry.
What are you? Are you a mother with children?
Yes. Can you let me speak? I will. Okay. So I have been processing, and we've been having really good talks. I learned that I had to talk about her pain before I could talk about mine. And we talked about her mother's pain before we talked about her pain. And we have been really processing, and it wasn't about me, it was about helping her to see how her pain had affected her, and then how her mom had affected. And so we've just been having really, really great talks. And I just wanted to say that it is possible, and it may seem slow, but yeah, it's been really good.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been holding that in because it's hard to talk with these guys.
So she needed your empathic listening.
What was that?
She needed your empathic listening in order to open up.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I wanted to say that. It's been good, but it's hard to share with these guys.
I understand. You did a great job. Thank you. All right. That was nice. Anybody else? Those of us who haven't been parents, or those of us who haven't been parents in a long time, forget what it's like to have little children. It's just, it's insane making. All right. Well, perhaps it's time to sing our way out of here. What do you think of that? Why don't we do that? I'll look forward to being with you tomorrow morning. Unmuting everybody. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for coming to the party. Goodbye, dear ones. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Alicia. Beautifully done, as always.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye, Bea and Sandra. And Linda Budd. I see you there, Linda. And Janet and Joan and Lori and, oh my goodness, Lorraine. Thanks for coming. And Greg. And Janet G. Bye-bye. Oh, I forget, since I'm not interactive with you, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for joining us.